think an elite seller is someone that takes the time to deeply understand their customer's needs, and really make sure that what they provide to the customer is exactly what the customer needs at every point in the journey.
What's up, Elite Sellers? We're your hosts, Frankie and Griffin, and welcome to the Elite Selling Podcast. Today, we've got an awesome guest for you. We've got Jessica Gilmartin, who is a former CMO turned CRO over at Calendly. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about how you can partner as a seller with the marketing team to build more pipeline and generate more revenue within your accounts. They do so much for you as marketers between events, branding, and other social media that we will get into here in a little bit. And it's our job as sellers to partner with the great work that they do. So we're going to talk about that in today's episode. You're not going to want to miss it. Before we jump into it, if you like this show, please do us a huge favor and like, subscribe, and share so that we can get this into other elite sellers' ears as soon as possible. So without further ado, let's jump into it.
Jessica, welcome to the Elite Selling Podcast. How are you today?
I'm great, thank you. How are you guys?
We are doing well.
Good.
It's great. It's sunny up in the Bay Area, so no complaints.
For now.
Yeah, exactly. For now, we'll see. Get that March showers. We appreciate you jumping on. This is a conversation Frankie and I have been looking forward to for some time now. We have a unique guest. You've been in the marketing space. You've been as a chief operating officer, now you're CRO of Calendly. Today, we're focused on the importance of sales partnering with marketing. So before we even get in, would love for you to give us your take. Why is this something you wanted to focus on today?
Yeah, so I've been in marketing for many, many years. I've also run sales at various companies, and I've always really considered myself a sales-friendly marketer. And I don't think that that's the case for everybody, but the reality is that we rely on each other. You know, without marketing, there won't be any inbound sales. There won't be any leads for sales to close. And without sales, there's kind of no purpose for marketers, especially in a sales, in a sales-led motion. And so we've always had sort of an uncomfortable relationship. And I think there's a lot of finger pointing. And it's always made me really sad when I've seen marketers, sort of say bad things about sales or, and the same thing for sales and marketing. And being a former salesperson and recognizing how hard it is to be a salesperson, I just think we should approach every partnership with empathy and kindness and understanding, because both jobs are hard. We need each other, and we should be kind to each other.
You had me at inbound leads. That is
Although I know all marketing leads are terrible. I know they're all the worst.
There's a famous movie scene because of that whole piece. So why is that such a battle though? It doesn't make any sense. Where did this come from?
Well, the number one thing, honestly, is just a misalignment of incentives. And so, sales, obviously, the way you feed your families and the way you pay your mortgage is with closed revenue. That is the only thing you care about. And your job is to figure out how to get there as fast as possible. So in your mind, every single lead that marketing gives you should be gift wrapped on a platter, ready to close a six-figure deal and 100% close rate.
With a little bow on it, with just a bow.
With a bow on it. Here you go, Griffin. Here's your 100K deal. Here you go, Frankie. Here's your 500K deal.
I was actually hoping for $1 million, but Okay,
well, I'm sorry. You're totally right. I apologize. Marketing already giving you that.
We're getting greedy over here.
But on the marketing side, historically, we have just been very separated from the revenue side. And the reality is that when we're focused on leads, and the problem is that oftentimes between a lead and a closed deal, right, there are so many different stages, we can't always control those. And so it's really hard for marketers and that's where it becomes this battle, because marketers are often aligned and incented and measured on leads. And at the most, they're measured on pipeline. But that's not actually what you guys care about. That's not what salespeople care about. You care about closed revenue. And so there's just this huge misalignment incentives where marketers are like, I'm driving tons of leads and it's your fault that you can't convert them. Obviously, that's not reality. And so the reality lies somewhere in between what marketers and salespeople say.
Yes,
Gosh.
100%. So what are some of the things you're doing in your new role at Calendly to fix this? What are you seeing and what are you doing?
Yeah, I have to say, I mean, I was saying to you guys before, I think every marketer should run sales at some point, especially in an inbound heavy business, because the alignment is just amazing now. And as I said, I always thought I was a very sales friendly, empathetic marketer. I really enforced that on my team. We had a no complaint policy about sales. I said, hey, we're not allowed to complain about sales. If sales is saying something, we need to listen to them. I think it's very different when you actually own the sales number and the salespeople work for you. That changes things very much. It's not for me just about listening to sales, but I actually have to own that number, and I have to own the efficiency of them, the same that I own marketing. And so I think that that's the biggest difference is, our sales team come to our marketing team meetings. They spend a huge amount of time now. Like we spend a lot more time asking sales, like, what do you do every day? What do the SCs do? What do the sales teams do? Like, what content is actually helpful for you? What questions do people have about Calendly when they get on the phone with you? And these are just things that we didn't do before. There's also an enormous amount of lead routing and lead routing challenges and scoring. And we kind of scratched the surface, and now we are getting about 50 levels deep in a way that we didn't before. And it's made just massive, massive changes and improvements in the way that our team understands what leads are valuable or not.
Yeah. Very interesting. So I'm thinking to myself, down the hall, my wife, she runs marketing for her company. And it's just as you're talking, it's this constant battle in our household. It's like a house divided, right? I'm in sales. And anytime I'm not going to say complains, but anytime she brings up her sales team, I'm like, I'm siding with the sales reps. I'm sure you're not giving them the quality they need. And it's just this hysterical. I'll say something. I just got off this marketing call and they're talking about everything they're going to deliver to us. And she's like, I'm on their team. I'm on the marketing team. Well, I mean, it's like Frankie mentioned, it's just this division. And so I love what you're doing to help break this down. But one of the things you talked about was alignment of incentives, more communication. What are some challenges you've seen in the past that have kind of led to that division of sales and marketing? And then with any other recommendations or experiments you're trying to help bring those back together?
I think, even though the sales team and marketing team talk to each other a lot, I think they just almost don't speak the same language. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes it's really hard. And I think, especially I have seen marketers get kind of defensive. So it's really hard when the programs that you're building and you work so hard on you think are really valuable. And you're like, no, but we drove all these leads, and the sales team is saying, but they're not valuable to us. And so I think one of the things that I try to do a lot with my team now is say, hey, they're valuable. They're just not valuable in this way.
Right.
And let's think about them differently. So, if we're running a webinar that we think is really valuable and that we think is useful for customers, right? It drives usage or it drives affinity to Calendly, or people understand us or thought leadership. That's great. And that's okay. So we don't have to judge everything that we're doing on, is it an MQL that we're getting to sales? But then we have to make sure that we are looking at all of those activities that we're doing, and we have enough of those to be able to drive lead volume. And so I think that that's like a big difference is, really thinking about all of the different types of activities that we're running, making sure that we are not treating them all the same and just sending all those leads to sales, but that we obviously are looking at the ones that are valuable to sales. We're getting their feedback, and we are making sure that we're running more of those. And just to give you an example, we were on a QBR recently, and a quarter ago, I wouldn't have been on that QBR for sales, and I wouldn't have heard this. But this QBR was just incredible, just an amazing fount of information. And someone mentioned, hey, whatever marketing is doing to drive Microsoft Dynamic leads, those are gold. Do more of that. That was not something that I had heard before. And so then it sent me on this discovery path of, hey, it actually turns out that anybody that uses Microsoft Dynamics loves Calendly. Those are great leads for us. Let's do more of those. And then sent them to my team, and my team was able to immediately spin up more ads, think about partnerships, think about events that we could do, webinars that we could do. That just very specific example of something that wouldn't have happened before. And we would have just had a regular campaign calendar, not even including that and not realizing it. So it's those very tactical, tangible things that we're doing now that we didn't do before.
So
Yeah.
really quick,
Go
Frankie, I
ahead.
want to double click on that because you said that came out of a QBR.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as sales reps, often we're in charge of scheduling meetings like a Q, obviously we get invited to do a QBR, but I'm thinking in a week of a sales rep, you have deal reviews, you have maybe a forecast, you have an account strategy review. I'm thinking of an account that I own where it's a renewal review. My point is, like, sales reps, we have ability to invite the right people into those meetings, and often it's like your sales rep, your maybe sales manager, their manager. I'm trying to think of other areas and other times where sales reps can actually pull in marketing to either just be
Hmm.
a fly on the wall or help strategize. Like, big to your point, if you weren't in that meeting, you wouldn't have heard that, and you had a fresh perspective coming in, and it's like, okay, now I can hear this, I can take that information and go run with it. I'm trying to think of other areas where sales can bring in and be proactive about bringing in marketing partners.
Yeah, so for sure on sales calls, as people are thinking about roadmaps, it doesn't just have to be the product. If you have, I have a fantastic product marketing team. I'm very fortunate, and they love to be on customer calls. They listen to our sales calls all the time. They're constantly pulling insights from them and figuring out, what's resonating, what's not. But our product marketers put together our forward facing product roadmaps. They are experts on it. They're excellent at it. And so you can't always get your head of product or your senior product
Right.
folks coming onto calls. So you absolutely can think about bringing product marketers on to do the product roadmap. They're super good at it. So I think that that's one really very easy example. Another thing that I would think a lot about is, we at Asana, we did this. At Calendly, we're starting to do this as well. As you have certain customers that you would like to expand, one thing that we did that's very successful is we actually built custom webinars for those customers. And so, I mean, that's a really great ABM motion that works really well. And so you find a champion customer, and that customer talks about how they use, in our case, how they would use Calendly to be successful. And then we do a whole host of marketing activities to get folks from that company on to a call. And there's nothing more valuable and powerful than hearing from somebody else at your company about why they use this product and how valuable it is. So
Yeah.
that's something that you could really, if your marketing partners are up for it, that's a great thing to partner with them on.
I love it.
Yeah.
Get your customers to sell for you better than you doing it as a sales rep. If you can coordinate
Yes.
that, make it happen. So, what are some other ways that sales reps can do it? I love the webinar idea, custom landing pages. What about events? How can sales teams tap into the marketing team to run events?
So, oh my gosh, man, events between sales and marketers is probably the touchiest subject of
Uh
any
oh.
of them.
Uh
Yeah,
oh.
so this is where I will share some frustrations that I've typically had with salespeople,
Here we go.
Tell us
and it's
what not
total.
to
Yes.
do.
Yes, yeah, so totally understandable, and I'll share it. This has literally been in every single company I've ever worked at. This is 15 years of experience. So the marketer will get the sales leaders approval and sort of commitment for the sales team to drive attendance at events, to reach out to customers and say, are you going to this event? We're having this dinner, and this poor marketer has killed themselves to do this incredible event experience, and they've booked this amazing, Michelin star restaurant nearby, and then the sales team gets really, really busy and doesn't do it.
Ooh.
And then there's also the post-event follow-up of, okay, we have all these leads, and so, let's reach out to them. There's 50 leads, there's 100 leads, there's 500 leads, and the sales team doesn't do it. So, and I 100% understand it, because it's a pretty low hit rate, and it's pretty distracting, and it's like all of a sudden you're trying to do your work, and then all of a sudden there's hundreds of leads that you have to reach out to. So I've just, after all these years, have just gotten very, very pragmatic about events. And so the way that we kind of do it is we do our own pre-event outreach if we want to. So marketing does the pre-event outreach. We don't even ask sales anymore. And then the biggest thing that we do is at the event. So we use our own product. So the main thing that we ask is that sales reps are very engaged at the booth. They're very engaged in sort of driving these conversations and engaging in them. And then we actually use Calendly routing on our own iPads. And so we don't do any post-event follow-up. The only leads that we really nurture and work for are the ones that come to our booth and seem engaged. And then we have them schedule a meeting with the sales rep in the booth at the moment of intent. And so we've just realized, like, we don't worry about the 100 people that come to get the Calendly socks. Like, those are not valuable leads for us. So we are really laser focused on the leads that have shown intent. And that's kind of the main thing that we ask of salespeople is be really engaged, really involved, really try to get that customer to sign up for a meeting at that moment, which I think is extremely different than other marketers. But after fighting the losing battle for so many years, I'm like, you know what, this is just what we're doing.
Well, it's like every trade show or dinner that you put together, you spend thousands and thousands of dollars and hours. And the normal thing to do is just get your entire marketing team, entire sales team focused on following up. And like you said, it's a huge distraction. It's probably for 95% of the people are never going to buy. They just wanted the free whatever you're giving away at the booth.
Little t-shirt.
Yeah. So I actually like that you're focused on the people that actually want to purchase, actually want to move forward and have those conversations. So I think that's super smart. And I also wanted to ask you about, we all have this notion nowadays about like your top 20% or hyper-focused accounts. What's your take on a sales rep coming to the marketing team and saying, hey, these are the 5 to 10 to 20 accounts, depending on how big your patch is, that I want to make sure I crack into this year or expand. Yeah. Is that valuable to you? Tell us a little bit about that thought process.
Yeah, that's really, really valuable. And so I think also a lot of what I've seen is it can sometimes be challenging to get sales leaders and individual sales team members to agree on that list. And so I think, having that engagement from AEs of, hey, what are the accounts that are valuable, but also having a shared understanding of what valuable means. So I think that that's also where I've seen a lot of marketers and salespeople kind of fall down a little bit in the communication is, let's agree on what the criteria is for what valuable means, because what is valuable to you may not actually be reasonable for a marketer to be able to target. And so I think for me, when I think about like, if you had a small number of accounts to target, I would think of, okay, it's one where we have relatively low penetration, but passionate engaged users, where we have significant upside either within that same department or within other departments. And so that to me is the perfect situation where there's a lot of upside because you already have engagement, you already have users. Obviously, if it's a pure sales-led motion and it's kind of binary, like you don't have any customers or users at all, it's a little bit different, but you should, again, have this very objective criteria that you use for everything, every decision around the accounts. And I think, honestly, where I have seen marketing struggle is that some AEs are really proactive and they will be great to work with and really responsive, and some aren't. And, what I've told my team is, for the AEs that aren't responsive, don't kill yourself. Like, don't push yourself. If they don't want your help, then don't help them, right?
Yeah.
Work with the AEs that are giving you good information and are really great to work with, are really responsive. So that's my advice to every salesperson and marketer listening is just like, why are you killing yourself to try to help someone that doesn't want help? Just work with the people that do want help.
There you go. Takes two to tango.
That's a pro tip for sellers too, right? Like Griffin and I were just talking about one of the top sellers at our past company that we worked at, and she was always gathering resources from the go-to-market team, and she was the number one by
Shout
far
out Susan.
every single
Susan.
year.
Shout out. Love you, Susan.
Crushed it.
If you're listening, you better be.
But to your point, it's because she was the one like getting the attention, and I mean, I think that's what good salespeople do. They get people in their corner to go fight those battles together.
It is absolutely. I mean, it is a one-for-one relationship between top sellers and sellers that know how to, build relationships and gather resources with CS, with SEs, with marketers, with product. I mean, they just know what they need to do to get the job done. And they don't believe that they do it alone. Like, they understand that this is a team sport, but they're also really effective at understanding how to get it. So they're not just asking and asking and asking and asking. They are asking in the right ways at the right moments for the right accounts.
There you go. But it all starts with, you just said it, the right accounts. Like you partner with marketing to understand who are the right accounts. Going
Yes.
back to your original point around the events and engagement, like as sales reps, you have a conscious decision to make at events like that. You can either call it in and just go and show up and sit in the
Yes.
back of the booth, or you can be on the front edge of the carpet, introducing yourself, shaking people's hands as they walk by. I mean, I think it's like a rite of passage doing the events and showing up and really challenging yourself to engage with the right customers. But so let's talk a little bit about the results that you've seen in your seat at Calendly so far today. I mean, like, you don't need to name names, but I'm thinking, are there examples have you seen examples of what good could look like when a sales rep really leans in and decides, you know what, this year something in my strategy is I'm going to partner with marketing, and how that has either transformed them or how that has improved their quality of pipeline or quantity of pipeline. Obviously, like that's really what, like you mentioned, we're here to do is get quality, good pipeline.
Yeah, I would say probably the best example is when the sales team gives extremely specific and actionable feedback, particularly around content that they need. So as an example, we, as many folks do, right, we have different types of plans. We have an enterprise plan, and always thinking about how do you differentiate that from, our team's plan. And I think all of us have the similar challenges, right? It's like, how do you justify this extra expense? And, one of the big things that we don't sell enough is the customer support, the implementation, like all of those kind of soft things that are actually really, really valuable. They help people make sure that their investment is going to be, their customers, their users are going to actually use Calendly and be successful. And so it was, we have one seller who gave, and didn't just say, hey, we need better materials on the enterprise plan. But she said to her head of product marketing, like, I think we don't sell our support and implementation as well as we should. Can you redo the enterprise plan materials so that you include this? So that's like very specific and very actionable. And so I was able to go back and say, hey, I think this is totally makes sense. And can you do it? What's the time frame on doing that? Versus, hey, your materials are bad. I can't sell the enterprise plan because marketing's materials are terrible, which, to be honest, you hear a lot. So it's like that kind of specificity that's like very, very helpful.
So that, what you're talking about, I'll give it to Frankie because I know he wants to jump in, but like, we talk so much when we have sales leaders jump on this podcast and talk about the importance of bringing a point of view to your customers and your prospects. Here's a point of view around how I think I can help your business. But what you're talking about is something we don't talk a ton about on this podcast, is having a point of view about your internal process and how to partner better and what you actually need in order to do your job better. So to your point, it's like if the CMO of my company were to come up to me and say, Griffin, what else do you need to be a better seller? Like, if I just say, no, I think I'm good. I'm good to go. I have what I need. Like, that's okay. Forget about Griffin. He's not, whatever. Yeah. But if I was to come back and say, Griffin's okay, he might not be here next year. But if I was to come back and say, look, I appreciate everything you're doing. Here's exactly what I need. I've actually put a lot of time and energy into this, and here's my point of view. I need more curated content. Here's the execs that I am prioritizing executive alignment. I need you to get in front of these executives over the course of the next 6 months. Like, that is such a powerful point of view to have as a sales rep, and it's such a great way to stand out within your organization to have that strong point of view.
And by the way, all the marketers know the salespeople that are helpful to go to and not. Like, we all say, oh, if you want to get good feedback, go to this person. And like, oh, don't bother bringing this person in. So if you're a salesperson,
don't be on the naughty list.
Yeah, don't be on the naughty list. But if you want your voice heard, if you want your agenda to be, if you want to promote your agenda, then be the person that is, active, proactive, gives good advice, gives actionable advice, shows up to the events, is at the front of the carpet. So, I mean, that's, to me, you want to be the salesperson that everyone listens to and that gets your opinions and ideas in. And you want to get that support for your top 20 accounts. Like, you want to be that person. You don't want to be the person that nobody listens to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and also going back to a couple points earlier, marketing, you're spending all this time and effort, not just on trade shows and those things, but also like dinners and custom events and webinars. And it's like, as sellers, a part of your weekly or monthly cadence should be find your current opportunities or early stage opportunities and start to invite people to that and be the seller that's like leaning in, right? Not just at the
Mhm.
events, but also at dinners and different things like that. And you're going to get the marketing team to come to you and ask you, hey, what type of events would be valuable? What location should we go to? So I just think
If
like
you
the
could
ones that are,
actually, yes, I would say if you were the salesperson that actually invited your customers
yeah.
and got them to show up at a local dinner, you will be the most valuable salesperson at the company. You can do anything that you want, and that
So
marketer will love you forever.
Frankie and I, we were. This is what I wanted to say when you brought up the events and the importance of driving attendance and how hard it is. So Frankie and I, what was it, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, when we were still working together,
Yeah, like
we
yeah,
we put on an event in Colorado, and we were responsible for driving our own
so
attendance.
hard.
It was well, we got what 20 people to register. So just to put in perspective how tough it is, sellers out there, if you think it's an easy job to drive attendance and marketing's got it easy, all they got to do is drive attendance. There was a storm the day of the event for like 2 hours and no one could get on the road. So what we had like 20 people ready to have a conversation. We flew in our CEO. One person showed. Frankie grabbed somebody from the lobby.
Yeah, I pulled somebody from the lobby.
We grabbed a random
legitimately.
person from the lobby, and he was a disaster. He was,
Hopefully he's not listening.
but the one guy that showed, we showed him a little love, and I think that actually turned into a deal. Not for either of us, but it was for
It
one of our
did.
teammates. It turned into a
It's
deal.
hard out there.
It was ridiculous. So
Don't
it
do
was the
events in
amount of
May in Colorado.
the
That's
amount
a
of
lesson learned.
we had so much anxiety driving people to that event and actually getting them to show. So we empathize.
I will tell you when I was at Honor, which is we sold to home care agencies. This was before Asana. We decided we wanted to put on this huge event. It was like the first big event that we did. We invested so much in it. It was like our year-long big rock.
Mm-hmm.
And what we did differently is we sat down with the sales leader at the very beginning of the process, and we said, we're only going to do this if you agree to this, if you commit to, X number of customers.
Mm-hmm.
And he did. And every single week we would meet and we would talk about which customers they've reached out to, what they've said, what we can do to help. And they did an unbelievable job at driving customers there. And so we had, and it was actually prospects. It was a combination of prospects and customers. And then they would give us feedback like, hey, our prospects said they would come if we covered their flights. And so then we actually created a tiering strategy. So we said, okay, top tier prospects will cover their flights, their hotel, car, everything. Second tier prospects will cover hotel, but not flights. So we came up with this process and we said, you have 10 people that you can give tier 1 to, 15 people you can give tier 2 to. And so they did like literally the best job I've ever seen of driving prospects. And it was the most successful event we've ever had and that I've ever been part of in terms of driving revenue. And so that partnership was so valuable, but it was because marketing wasn't telling sales what to do, right? Marketing and sales partnered together. We agreed together on what the goals were. We listened to them. They gave us really good feedback. They were engaged. They committed to something. And like that to me is just the model of how marketing and sales should work together.
Yeah. Weekly check-ins, if not more,
Yeah.
going towards the same KPIs like you said at the beginning.
Yeah.
So that's huge. All right. So I want to get a little bit tactical, specific to the time that we're in, right? It's March 2024, which is crazy because it's almost the end of Q1 if you're on a calendar year.
March Madness.
And yeah,
Yes.
Griff's basketball guy, so March Madness, shout out. So what are some of the things that you're seeing that work right now as far as creative outreach to get people in the pipeline? Because what used to bring in 10 opportunities now brings in 3 or 5.
Yeah.
It's like cut in half, if not more. So what are some creative things that you're seeing people do? What do you see working? Like what suggestions do you have to sales and marketing?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be really honest, we actually don't do sales outreach anymore. We just don't do cold sales outreach anymore. I just don't know that it works. I think it is extraordinarily different now than it was earlier in my career, where it definitely worked. I mean, we had BDRs. We saw a reasonable, outreach response rate. Everything we're doing now is basically to get people to raise their hands. We're
Mm.
using a lot of technology in order to do that. So the way that we're partnering with sales is kind of what you said before, which is we are coming up with account lists based upon a lot of different intelligent things. So whether it's um, technology that we know they use, like Microsoft Dynamics, whether it is competitors that we know that they use that we have competitive advantage over, whether it's certain industries that we know are particularly, using Calendly. So we create all these smart lists, and then we use lots of different technology to try to find them at different places on the web, and really try to just get them into our funnel and get them to actually raise their hand and say they want to talk to sales. So that's how
Hmm.
we've totally transformed our outreach strategy over the past couple of months. And I have to say, it's actually working really, really well. So I know that that's can be challenging if you're a salesperson. You're like, well, I don't have a marketing team that's doing that. But I just think it is so incredibly hard to be a seller. The only other thing I would do is say, social, and I know you probably have heard this a million times, but it's true. Social marketing is fundamentally different and more valuable than it was even 2 or 3 years ago. I think people are spending way more time on LinkedIn than they are on other channels. And so
Yeah.
we really invest a huge amount now in LinkedIn content. It's incredible how many people are now finding us and researching us on social versus what it was a few years ago.
Yeah. My wife makes fun of me. We'll be like standing in the grocery line. I'll be like on my phone on LinkedIn. And she's like, "You're on LinkedIn instead of Instagram?" I was like, "Yeah, that's what I'm doing." So people, I totally
Frankie and
agree.
I
People
get
are
the
on LinkedIn. Can't
yes.
get enough. But I would say, in all seriousness, though, like whether or not you're at a company that does what you just mentioned, where you're like warming up accounts and getting people engaged to raise their hand, like even as a seller, if you don't have any of like intent technology or account intelligence technology, you can go research and like make sure you find accounts that are in your ICP, try to do your best to figure out like what news articles that might be relevant. And there's a lot of other things that might be a little bit more manual, but hey, at least you're not like sitting back and like picking up the phone and hoping somebody is in market to buy. So I love what you
Yeah.
said. And even as an IC, I would say go tell your marketing team about what you just mentioned. Like, hey, is there anything out there that we can go find to help us think about our accounts in a smarter way? So that's really
Yeah.
good.
I will also add, and I created a LinkedIn post, gosh, maybe 6, 7 months ago that went insanely viral. And it was all about why you should not be doing outreach to me, the CMO. And if you haven't seen it, read it because it got a lot of attention and all of my peers agreeing. Because I think there's just this misnomer, and everybody tells salespeople, find the highest person you can, find the C level. I get literally hundreds of reach outs every single week, and I don't respond to one single one of them because I don't control the budget. I set the very high level priorities for my team, but I don't implement the technologies. I don't decide what the technologies are. I have nothing to do with it. And if I told my team to look at something, they would be so annoyed at me, because they're like, I already have my priorities. I already know the technologies I want to use. They're constantly in the market looking for things. They're talking to their peers. I am 100 levels removed from the day to day of the job. And so that would be like my number one sort of tip is do your research. Don't just take the easy way out and find the C-level person and reach out to them. They're probably not going to respond. Like, do the research, find whoever it is, the growth marketing manager, the demand gen person, the product leader for whatever, like find that person and reach out to them with something that is valuable to them.
Hmm.
Love
Gold.
that.
What about giving you updates on what they're talking with the team and like not asking you to get on a meeting? Is that helpful or is that just annoying too?
No.
All right, don't do it. Don't do
Don't do
it.
it. Because like and I get this all the time, which is people reaching out and saying, "Hey, I talked to blah blah blah, and we're in negotiations," and I'm like, it doesn't matter to me. Like at some point, they're going to come to me and ask me for money, and I'm going to ask them a bunch of questions about why they need it, and like if they have done a good job of putting together, an RFP and telling me why they need it and the return and what alternatives they looked at, I'm going to trust them. I'm not going to trust the vendor that has reached out to me. Like, I'm obviously, you want to sell me
Hmm.
something. I'm going to trust the person that works for me, and assume that they have done their due diligence.
Well, thanks
Yeah.
for responding to jump on this podcast. We feel
Yeah,
honored
exactly.
now.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of a previous guest that we had on, Nate Nezrella, who talks about, what was it? People like me and Frankie, we don't, sell software. We sell to champions, internal champions at like a Calendly that sell the software to their decision makers. So just the importance for the listeners. Okay, again, Frankie and I talk about it a lot. Build your champions. Your champions are your success in software sales. They are the ones that advocate for you internally. So go build them up. 100%.
Yeah,
So
and I every year I go through and I look at my budget and I look at all the millions of tools that we have. I'll say, do we need this? Do we need this? Do we need this? And there's some, and often they say no, and sometimes they're like, you're going to take this over my cold dead body. And you're like, and that's what you want to have, right? You want to have those champions, but of course those champions come because it's not necessarily during the sales process, but it comes because your product is valuable and you've given good service and we've gotten value out of it. And so I think that's the important part, is not just the initial sale, but obviously what comes after that, and making sure that what you have promised in the sales process is what you've actually delivered.
So as we wrap, talk to us a little bit about how things are going at Calendly. A year or so you've been in the CRO role. I mean, how's the team doing? We'd love to learn more about if there's opportunities. Like I mentioned, our listeners are always looking for great companies to work for.
Yeah, so I have not been in the CRO role for a year. I've been in the CMO role for a little over a year, and the CRO role only since January. I don't want to take anything away from my amazing folks that were before me. Yes. So yeah, only a quarter. So far, so good. I think we did a big reorganization in January, which is when I took over the role, and learned a lot. We created 2 different teams, each focused on different segments of the market. And so very different. It's been great so far. I think probably the biggest thing is just how much we've all learned, and how much we've all adapted to obviously all the changing market conditions, and just really mainly thinking about how do we meet our customers where they are. So how do we make sure that our sales processes and our plans, our team are really focused on what our customers want from us, as opposed to what we want for our customers. And so that's been really fantastic. I've got to say, I was a little bit nervous about taking over sales. It's been a while since I've run sales, and could not have enjoyed it more. Could not be more proud of the team if they're listening. Just really impressed and really grateful for how amazing the team is, and definitely, always looking for great people as we think about growing the team.
Love Frankie and I love.
All right, so
Calendly.
Before we,
we're big power users over here. Exactly.
I know. So before we ask you the last question, Jessica, are there is there anything else you want to share with the listeners before we wrap up, to put a bow on the conversation? Anything you want to share as final thoughts?
Yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation. I do love talking to salespeople. I love talking about sales. It's the lifeblood of every single company, and I wish more people understood the nitty gritty of the sales process and actually how hard it is. So I would just say, as every salesperson, just really take into heart that marketers want to be helpful. We really, really want you to be successful. And the more that you can help us help you be successful by being specific, by being proactive, by following through on commitments, then the better you will be and the more successful you will be.
Be a good partner.
Yeah.
Be a good partner.
Help me.
We love marketers too.
Help you. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. We need to throw like that quote in here right in the middle.
I'm thinking of Jerry Maguire. Help me, help you. Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
I love it. Awesome, Jessica. So it's been a great conversation. It's been our pleasure. So thank you again for jumping on. So we'll wrap with a question we love. How would you define an elite seller?
I think an elite seller is someone that takes the time to deeply understand their customer's needs, and really make sure that what they provide to the customer is exactly what the customer needs at every point in the journey.
Boom. Mic drop.
Perfect.
I love it. And I love it because it goes back to the point that you made earlier, where it's not just about the sale, but afterwards, because then you're going and asking, hey, do we need this technology? And it's about that whole entire process. So such a good point, Jessica.
Jessica, this has been awesome. Thank you again. We really appreciate you jumping on and taking time out of your day. Good luck with everything in the rest of 2024, and we'll be cheering for you. Jessica, that is a wrap. Thank you for jumping on today's episode of the Elite Selling Podcast. This is a great conversation. So many insightful takeaways and why we need to partner with marketing and sales. Straight up. So let's get into it. Top 3 takeaways from today's episode. Number 1, marketing is our friend. If they're successful, you're successful, and vice versa. We're all in this together. It all starts with a mindset shift. You need to look at marketing as a partner and not an enemy in any capacity, right? So that's number 1. Number 2, once you understand this, you've got to be proactive, right? All about partnering with marketing. Understand their KPIs, that they align to yours. Find out who you need to connect with in your own organization, whether that's the BDR org, whether that's the account-based marketing team, product marketing, your marketing leadership. Understand who those people are and get to know them, build relationships with them, be proactive. And then lastly, really lean into the programs that they're building. Their programs are all built around driving pipeline and top of funnel. You should care about that as well, right? So understand what programs they're doing, whether they're events, online, virtual, pipeline generation campaigns, executive alignment, thought leadership events. Really lean into that. And it's such an incredible opportunity for you to build your own personal brand within your organization as a thought leader in partnering with sales and marketing. So again, Jessica, thank you so much for jumping on today's episode of the Elite Selling Podcast. Go get them at Calendly. We'll look forward to seeing you do some great things. Thanks again.